Hey everyone, this is Dayu from EcommOps. Today I'm going to talk about tariffs again. I feel like I'm going to do these updates every week or so, but it is important because things are changing very quickly. I want to make sure that you guys actually have the most up-to-date information on what's going on, and probably more importantly, what does that actually mean for D2C shipping, parcel shipping from China. So let's get started, and by the way, there's some good news as well. So there was a 10% additional tariffs on China, so that's additional, so it's 20% on top of what's existing. 25% tariffs on Canada and Mexico goes into effect for now. We'll talk about that. Good news though is the Minimis elimination is still paused for all countries, and we'll go through the actual sources for that. And I think more good news is that YunExpress or Courier has announced successful testing of their new DDP parcel line. So we'll go through all of that. Now, before we go too deep, if you don't know what we're just talking about right now, or you haven't seen this first video, please watch that one first, because this is going to be a relatively short update, assuming you watch the first full detailed summary of the situation. And I want to keep this short and sweet without all the context for our existing viewers. So check out our YouTube channel or check out my page at Facebook, the Dayu Yang, or the EcommOps YouTube channel. All right, so let's get started. So 10% additional tariffs on China. Now, I want to be emphasized that this is on top of the February increases. So it's currently March right now. There is a CNN article here, but basically it was previously 10% and now it is 20%. They talk about tariff here as well, but the highlighted portion here is what's important. And again, I want to emphasize, similar to last time, is 10% additional. Does not mean 10% tariffs. So the examples we used last time were two different examples. Based on HTS codes, base rates, section 301. If you don't know what I'm talking about here, definitely check out my previous video. So the new tariffs announced on February 25th, that was already 10% on top of this, and now 10% on top of that once again. So for these two examples, you're talking about 25.3% or 56.1%. So it could be quite high for certain consumer products. And again, it's on top of existing duty and tariffs already. So this could actually have a pretty significant impact on a lot of you out there. That being said, I mean, this has the most impact if you're actually moving traditional freight, if you're going through the traditional custom clearing route and paying formal duty. And we'll talk about that a little bit later. So this officially goes into effect again. So this was announced back in February, and then there was a new announcement that they are proceeding with the tariffs on Canada and Mexico. I'm sure you heard about it in the news already. It should already be in effect right now. However, no one knows exactly how long that's gonna last. Who knows? By the time you see this already, maybe they struck a deal or the US rolled back on the Canada and Mexico tariffs. So just keep that in mind, that maybe by the time you actually see this, that 25% Mexico and Canada tariff is going to change. Now, the reason why I talk about those tariffs, even though it's not directly China related, is because a lot of folks have been asking me, wait, the original Mexico and Canada tariff announcements, they were supposed to get rid of de minimis, similar to how they were supposed to for China. So this was concerning to everyone out there, because if they were saying at a blanket statement that the Mexico and Canada tariffs were going to be reenacted, does that actually mean that de minimis is going to be eliminated for those tariffs, and therefore potentially likely to be eliminated for China sooner as well? So the good news is no. So we have sources for all of these. And by the way, when you're in doubt of like all of the hype news, try to find the actual source itself, which here is going to be the White House executive order amendments. So the highlighted here is, I mean, this is what really matters, and then I'll link to the sources below too as well. But basically, regardless of all these tariff announcements, they're continuing. However, the de minimis treatment is still available, okay, for both Mexico and Canada. So by the way, this was actually the exact same amendment that happened for China as well. So basically, the tariffs have increased, and the tariffs are happening for Canada and Mexico for who knows exactly how long, maybe not that long. However, this part is really important for cross-border shipping. actually for many of these countries, or from China especially, because as many know, China shipping, small parcel shipping, actually depends on the de minimis rule for essentially no duty and just efficient processing. And you'll note that all three of these languages are essentially the same, talking about how de minimis is still going to be available regardless of these tariffs for now until adequate systems are put in place. So there is the expectation that customs is currently working, U.S. customs at least, working to be able to manage having de minimis go away, which by the way, if you haven't seen my previous video, it's going to be a massive resource intensive task to be able to do so. Now, we do expect from what our couriers say and what we hear is de minimis elimination might return as early as April 2025. Now, I don't know. No one knows exactly. These are probably at best guesses. It really depends on if customs is going to be ready, what Trump's going to do, regardless if they're ready or not. But I think that it would be certainly wise to assume that de minimis elimination is going to be an issue again. However, for the time being, technically speaking, everything is back to normal for China shipping at least. For China direct shipping at least, if you are importing bulk goods into the US from China, you're going to be hit with 20% additional tariffs now. So that's bad for like bulk retailers and things like that, or if you're moving containers over to the US. However, for direct to consumer parcel shipping, everything remains the same, and actually, things are actually cheaper than Q4 peak season prices already anyways. All right, so this is something that a lot of you guys have been waiting for, learning about what YunExpress is trying to do in terms of a more efficient DDP parcel line. And again, like, you gotta watch my previous video for context if you don't know what I'm talking about. So as a reminder, the reason why this is so important is who the importer is through the various forms of customs declarations, and therefore the declared value and the responsibility of who's responsible for that. So let's start with like more traditional bulk freight. Let's use like H&M for example. I mean, these are just rough numbers. Freight ships from China to the US at US customs. The importer is the retailer, the brand, the importer itself. Now the factory COGS might be $3, let's just say, and then let's just say simply that is a 30% duty rate. So technically speaking, they would pay the $3 times 30%, which is 90 cents, paid by H&M or the brand owner in order to get to a US warehouse. H&M might sell it for $30. Customs doesn't really care about that. Ships to customers duty free plus sales tax, but let's not get into sales tax for now. So this is the more traditional method. The direct method, something like DHL, for example, is say like Shein, and assuming the customer uses DHL, is they sell something for $30, D2C shipping to the US. At US customs, the importer is technically the recipient. So in this case, the customer. And technically, they should be declaring retail value. So let's just say $30, duty is 30%, and the import value would be $9 plus a lot of customs fees paid by the end customer. So that's a lot higher, right? Now, there is a lot of ways you can kind of fudge on this retail declared value, market value, whatever it might be. However, basically with this method, you're not going to be declaring like factory COGS. And that's a huge difference in these declared values. All right, so now under YunExpress's current model, so for most of their product lines, they use something called a T86 custom clearing. And this is assuming that at least currently, de minimis is still in effect. So the exemption for parcels or packages under $800 is still under effect. So let's just say you have a brand, you sell for $30. And you use EcommOps or whoever your China 3PL is, we send to YunExpress. YunExpress clears customs, and basically like declared value, like factory COGS, doesn't really matter because it is under $800. Now, I suppose if you like are selling a very high value kind of product, this might be an issue. But most of you out there in D2C e-com, you're not selling anything under like over $800 in value anyway. So basically, they declare it's under $800, and technically the recipient is the customer, but it just doesn't matter because that's the point of de minimis. It just clears customs scot-free, and there's no declaration. There is some declaration, but it just doesn't matter. And then it ships to the customers, and there's no import duty paid. So that's how it is currently, and that's how it is going to be until when and if de minimis elimination becomes a thing again. All right, so this is YunExpress's current DDP solution for if and when de minimis is eliminated, so the threshold is gone again. So I want to emphasize exact details are still being finalized. The good news is that there have been rounds of testing on this model, and it seems to actually work quite well and it's pretty efficient. However, it's just not really done at volume because like I mean, you don't need to use this line right now when de minimis is still in effect. So in this example, your brand sells something for $30 and you're working with EcommOps or whatever China 3PL works with YunExpress. And let's just say your declared value is $3 factory COGS. And then YunExpress or whatever they're doing here, and no one knows on the exact mechanism, and I don't think they want you to know either, and maybe you don't want to know, is they're technically the importer or someone on their end is the importer, they clear and pays for duty. Now, this is where it gets interesting because, I mean, it's a pure DDP model, okay? So the total import duty paid is actually zero. And actually this is, sorry, per kilogram. So this is regardless of their actual declared value, what they're going to charge extra is just between $1.10 to $1.40, 38 cents or so per kilogram. It depends on your weight, and it's pure DDP, which means that regardless of what your declared value is, regardless of what actually happens here at US Customs, all you really pay is the additional rate for this DDP. And you know, a lot of folks have asked me, okay, like what, like is this legitimate for DDP? Because you know, some brands are worried that there's gonna be some risk to them or the customers. Technically, no. And that's how DDP shipping works, whether it's direct parcel shipping or you know, air freight, sea freight. If it's DDP, then you pay a predetermined rate that you agree with, right? Sometimes that varies depending on your product. However, at least for this line, we expect that the predetermined rate is going to be within this range, increase over the ordinary line with no additional import duty paid. And it's basically their responsibility to figure out this portion. They have supposedly efficient, a legitimate way of doing this, but again, because it is DDP, there should be no additional cost and also no additional risk on the brand or the customers. So a brief comparison of these three models in terms of cost as well. Traditional import, you know, this is what a lot of big retailers use. They pay some duty rate on their factory COGS. Customer as an importer, technically you would pay on your declared value plus your duty fee plus some sizable fee, right? Now, by the way, in my previous video, and a lot of folks have been talking about T11 customs clearing as well. So if you don't know about that, watch my previous video. Technically speaking, T11 customs clearing, the issue with that is the customer is supposed to be the importer or consignee. Now, it works differently because then the courier would pre-collect the duty. However, with the customer as importer, there is an actual risk that there's supposed to be some concept of market value declaration as opposed to factory COGS declaration. So in this specific case, for T11 customs processing, it's not exactly going to be maybe $30 retail. I mean, there's going to be some flexibility on what market rate actually means. However, it's not exactly going to be factory COGS. Whereas for the YunExpress DDT method is YunExpress, like they just handle the clearance and the duty itself. Import duty is going to be zero plus this additional price increase for this specific line. Very important note though is that now being in March is not peak season anymore. Actually, this is like, even with this increase on the ordinary line, this is still about $4 per kilogram cheaper than peak Q4 season rates. Now, it's paid by the brand owner, exact rate still TBD, but this is what we're looking at in terms of the range. The implication of this is that even if de minimis comes back, this should not actually be a huge issue for you guys. I mean, like, a lot of products out there are not even a kilogram. For example, let's just say your product is 200 grams. 200 grams, that's really just a 22-cent increase on your shipping for that one product without any additional duty. So if this does work, this is obviously very cost efficient and very attractive. Now, there are some downsides of the potential TDP model. First is only efficient if the brand has enough scale and volume per SKU. Oh, and PowerPoint thinks that this is a typo, but does it think this is a typo? There you go. So the implication of it, because the nature of how it works is that they do actually have some mechanism of importing goods into themselves under the same or similar HTS code, which means that the model doesn't really work if you have like a shipment with 1,000 different HTS codes, a huge variety of products. So if you're an EcommOps client, like, I don't think you have to worry about this at all, because like all your products have enough scale. But this does probably matter though if you're like drop shipping, if you're just starting out, you don't have that much scale for your product, and especially if it's a rather unique product, which you want to sell anyways, right? But yeah, so just keep in mind that you do have to have enough scale, not just your total order volume, but per SKU. Even if you have 1,000 orders per day, if you have 1,000 SKUs in that with different HTS codes, then that might be tricky as well if this model is actually utilized. There might be some additional process delays at and post custom. So right now, actually, it's going fine. But right now, customs is not really an issue right now. When stuff actually changes, when de minimis gets eliminated once again, then I do think that it's wise to expect some additional processing delays at and after customs as they go into last mile. It does have no limitations on certain products. So just keep in mind. For now, I'm relatively certain. So they've only tested on non-battery, like non-cosmetic, like just simple, like ordinary products. Personally, I'm fairly certain that battery products won't be an issue. However, if you're selling a cosmetic or something more unique, this is where potentially this model might be less efficient, or there might be a different line. However, YunExpress does a lot of different product types, so even if you have a more sensitive product, we are rather confident that either YunExpress or one of the competitors is going to find some more unique solution as well. And then, we talked about it, there is going to be an increase in shipping rates, DDP, but again, I do want to emphasize that currently, because it is kind of low season and cheaper prices as well, the increase in this DDP rate on the ordinary line currently is actually like significantly cheaper even than the peak season rates for YunExpress to the US. All right, so that's it for now. Again, definitely watch this first YouTube video, or like I put it in my Facebook as well if you don't have the context. And generally, follow me on YouTube, follow me on Facebook. Facebook is probably going to be the best way to get the most up-to-date information because it's much faster for me just to make a post rather than shoot this video all the time. And my expectation is things are going to keep changing. Something's going to happen here with like Canada and Mexico, and I think that things are going to keep changing. No one exactly knows exactly what's going to happen, and it's a period of like huge uncertainty for the entire market. And unfortunately, look, those have been through like COVID. I mean, everyone through COVID, but like if you're in e-commerce during COVID, shipping stuff from China or freight from China, you're used to dealing with that high level of uncertainty. And my suggestion is, in times of high uncertainty, just embrace it. Like, don't love it. Like, no one likes uncertainty, but I think you have to just assume that uncertainty is going to be here in the future. And how do you adjust for uncertainty? Actually, if you watch my previous video, I did give some suggestions, but just generally speaking, work with trusted courier lines. Make sure that you're using right shipping lines. Like I highly suggest you using like YunExpress, Yang1 or 4PX. Use great 3PLs. Like, work with us if you have good volume. If you don't, or you don't like to work with us, like that's totally fine. But work with a legitimate China 3PL who actually knows all of this stuff and do the right things, right? Like if needed, pay for DDP shipping, pay for duties, make sure you declare HTS codes, and now is the time that in the wake of uncertainty, there's going to be a lot of other smaller, less legit players who are going to drop out. And if you are a more legitimate brand, as I know like most of you EcommOps clients are, I think that you're hopefully going to, and I think I'm confident that on a net basis at least you're going to come out ahead. All right. Well, thank you guys for listening, and see you guys probably next time soon on this topic. All right. Once again, this is Dayu from EcommOps. See you guys next time.